Hopefully soon enough I'll be there because I have been
I'll
seeing
take
people.
I'll take you as a plus one. I'll take you as a plus one if I go next time.
So how did you get into sales?
I think that's a good question. It's a pretty long story. I actually went to college, studied business. I've been around sales all my life, I would say, in a different capacity. When I was younger, when I was in college, I sold shoes, sneakers. I sold fidget spinners. I don't know if you remember, they were in demand after COVID. I sold perfumes as well, so I would get them from a supplier and then resell them. So that was one aspect. I also worked in retail sales for a couple of years. So that involved working in a retailer called JD Sports here in Ireland, and then another company called Hugo Boss. You're probably familiar,
Yeah.
high-end brand, and that's probably where I really felt the need for a job that involves a bit of commission and involves like hard work equals more rewards because it was commission based. I was dealing with a lot of high-end clients, people that have a lot of money that trust you to take their card and get them what they need or what they would like or what they think they would like.
Mm.
So yeah, I really excelled in Hugo Boss, really did well, really enjoyed it. Was building a lot of connections as well there. So that aspect of things was very key to me. I'm very extroverted. I really enjoyed like interacting with people. So yeah, the last year in college, sales wasn't really something that they spoke to us a lot about. It was very like niche thing or maybe morally unacceptable, as they would say. But I had one module. It was called sales or selling organizations, and the teacher wasn't very practical. It was very theory based, but it really opened my eyes up. It was like something that I'd never looked into. I had a few friends that were working as account executives and SDRs in different organizations, and I spoke to them and I was like, "Listen, the accounting route that my college professors are recommending isn't for me. I'm not the biggest fan. I'm not necessarily good at it either. So, what should I do, or would you recommend sales? What's it like?" Once I got their perspective, they were like, you'd really do well in it. You'd excel. It's something that probably would suit your personality. You're very out there. So yeah, I decided to give it a try. It took me around 6 months to get into tech sales specifically. A lot of people think it's easy and you get the job overnight. It doesn't work like that, really. It might seem like that on LinkedIn and on paper, but no. I started applying before I finished my final year in college because I knew if I waited till afterwards, it would take another 6 months after that to get the job, or maybe even longer. So application upon application, 4 to 5 stage interviews. I can't even count how many I had, but listen, after long interviews and a lot of work and a lot of outreach, to get the job, I finally received an offer here at Datadog, and that's where I am now. I've been SDR here for 9 months now. I'm loving it. The culture here is great, and the sales is lovely. Like that's all I can say.
Yeah, what a journey! Because I think that we are all of us are coming from the same, like, may I say, background. We are basically selling tangible products until we find something called tech sales. Let's pursue this one and let's figure out what's talking about and how I can like apply it to it and what it takes to be a tech salesperson. If you received an offer from a 20 years old corporate and a higher offer from a 2 years old startup, which one would you accept?
I think this question is a pretty hard one. I don't think it's a black and white answer, but it really depends on probably like the learning curve, the exposure. Yeah, and maybe I'd probably lean towards the startup. Obviously, not working in a startup now, so I don't want to be too open about that. But assuming there's like a lot of mentorship and like let's say a good product market fit, obviously like there's going to be a lot of chaos. There's going to be a lot of learning. You're going to learn on the job in a startup. But I think that can stand to you. And I think like it's very valuable going forward in your career. Obviously, when it comes to a 20-year corporate, obviously it would entail a lot of like leadership, a clear pathway to progression, which is obviously very key if you're looking to progress very quickly. And obviously, like if it's the right culture, it's very easy to get along with people and very easy to progress, as I said, up the ladder. So I don't know, like in sales, obviously money matters, but I think the trajectory for me like matters a lot more. So I'd probably go for startup because I've never been in one, but at the same time, 20-year corporate. If I want to jump up the ladder quickly, then so it's a hard one. I can't choose.
I'm a sucker for startups, by the way. So I have been like
Okay.
selling for startups for 8 years, and I'm not intending to be like moving to any corporate soon. And I state that like clearly and loudly because as you said, I love the learning curve. from each one, and each one of them has its own like lessons. I thought in the beginning that like basically they are going to be challenging the same challenges, but apparently they haven't.
Actually, speaking to one of my colleagues here who was in Datadog and he moved over to a startup in Portugal, and he mentioned it's a whole different environment. He has a lot of autonomy as an SDO that he previously didn't. He was taking a lot of the sales cycle on that as an SDO previously he wasn't able to in a big corporate. He was experimenting with a lot of different tools that he was mentioning to us, and we're like, "What's that?" Because as I said, in the corporate, it's set. Like the tools are set. Everything is set for you, and you're basically just taking that on and using it and utilizing it and trying to succeed. So as you said, there's different pros and cons, but I think a startup will be crazy. Obviously, if the startup grows very quickly and scales and they offer equity in stocks, then you could be a millionaire in no time. So
Exactly.
there's obviously the pros and
Exactly.
cons.
Speaking of
Exactly.
technologies and tools, which sales tool does help you the most with your work as an SDR?
I think it's a great question. There's a lot of tools, but I think the one that stands out to me is probably LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I'm not sure you're probably familiar,
Yeah.
but I think like that tool specifically like helps you like do a lot of in-depth research when it comes to only prospects, but also like let's say the buyer intent. Let's say if you have mutual connections with them, who are the mutual connections? Is someone that you already like is aware of your product or aware of your company? And obviously job movement as well. So like people moving from company to company, it tells you, let's say recently they've moved job. I think like, and that obviously makes like outreach much easier and a bit more relevant and human in a sense. But it's obviously like not just a research tool in a sense. You can like, instead of like having to take a lot of time to research, it gives you a lot of context quickly and rapidly. And I think like when you're working across like different markets and multiple international markets, it makes it a lot easier. So
I saw that you have been to Leap 25 in Saudi Arabia. So, what's one thing you have learned out there?
Leap was crazy, to be honest. Leap was my first event with Datadog. Obviously, I've been to Saudi Arabia before, but like seeing, I don't know, like where Riyadh is going and how they're building the future of tech in Saudi Arabia and the investments being pumped in is crazy. I think like it's Leap is like it's like it gives you a vision of the future. Like you see in different companies, innovations, and obviously not just for tech in the Middle East, but also companies worldwide. They're setting up there from startups. Like I have a friend of mine that he actually had a startup booth there, which was crazy to see. I went to college with this guy, he's a close friend of mine, and then it suddenly like you just see he has a booth at one of the biggest tech events in the world. I would say like it's a 5 day event. I'm not sure how many people attend, but it's crazy numbers. And for me, it was just like inspiring to see the innovation and like what's coming out of the region. Like a lot of the time, like I think back home, like for me, like Egypt or like that area of the world, it's like it's behind. But then I'm working with like CTOs and companies, and I'm like, bro, this is a great idea. Like I never thought about that. Like so, there's a lot of innovation going on, a lot of like bright minds. And I think like even meeting like the prospects in person, let's say that I would have just called on the phone or spoke to over the phone was great. I think interacting with them in person and seeing a face to the name and makes it a lot easier. And I think building connections, people buy from people. So once you see someone in person and you can speak to them, it makes it a lot easier. So yeah, obviously also maybe proud to be part of like Datadog and part of that tech ecosystem in the world. So yeah, it was a great opportunity for me, and I'm really proud of it. Like
I have never been to one, but hopefully soon enough I'll be there because I have been
I'll
seeing
take
people.
I'll take you as a plus one. I'll take you as a plus one if I go next time.
I don't know if you have sold in like the GCC countries or in the Middle East in general, but as a bilingual salesperson, what's the difference between selling in Europe and the Middle East?
That's a great question. So I actually work the African market, which includes Egypt for us, partially Middle East because of a lot of companies, or let's say they're set up in the Middle East, but they're like Egyptian owners or Egyptian personas. So I've had a bit of exposure. I've also experienced calling leads at the start of my journey here as an SDR in the UKI region, Europe. So there's experience there. I would say the main thing for me that stands out is like I think the sales process is often like a lot more structured in a way. Like in Europe, like buyers they expect exactly value, like concise value, and like obviously clear return on investment for them to actually like give you the time and take a meeting. And then obviously like on the ball communication is so sharp. Like if they set a deadline or they set a meeting, they're gonna be there, they're gonna show up because they want to do this. Whereas like in the Middle East, let's say Africa, I would say because that's where I'm more experienced. Obviously, value like is very important, but it's like they like to have like that. You need to build that connection and that friendliness and that like long term influence. I would say. A lot in Africa, like a lot of people, they're nice. They accept meetings on the phone to make you happy, but then they don't show up to meetings, and that's a huge problem for me across the market, across the region. It's a huge issue. So it's sometimes it's not a nice feeling, but at the same time, like I would love a bit of clarity. If you really don't need the product, just tell me, or you're not interested. Be straight up. I'd rather that than you tell me yes. I've had calls where I've had a prospect. I've called him 10 minutes for the meeting. He's like, yeah, Omar, I'm looking forward to the meeting. Can't wait to see what Datadog can do for us and how we can add value and fill in these gaps. And then I show up to the meeting 10 minutes later and he's not there. He doesn't show up, and he just goes. So that just gives you like a summary of Africa in a nutshell, and probably the Middle East. I don't want to be too harsh, but yeah, obviously like being bilingual or whatever helps you adapt like to different tonalities, at a different pace, because obviously every different personas have you have to be different, act differently, and approach them differently. But I'd say Europeans are more straight to the point, more direct, and you have to be like sharp. You have to know what you're saying. Whereas in Africa, it's like most of the time you probably haven't heard of like your product is an emerging, for us anyway, it's an emerging market. So you have to kind of pitch, you have to explain it in an easy manner. And then, yeah, that's probably like the main differences, I would say.
Now to the favorite part of my episode. These following questions hasn't been disclosed to my guest here, to Omar. So I'm gonna be having him on spot right now with some role play questions. A prospect says, I'm not interested. What's your next line?
Good one. I think that's the most common, let's say, objection. First of all, like you need to ask him, why aren't you interested? Is it because usually what I ask is it because your current setup is rated an 11 out of 10? You would say it's out of this world. Or is it because you're really busy right now and you hate cold callers? That's usually the line. It's like one of both. It's like you either get the laugh out of them for hating cold callers, or genuinely they're not interested because they have a great setup. And if they have a great setup and you go and dig into that and they say no, then like, do you know what I mean? What can you do? Because not every company will need your product, or not every person will buy. So yeah, that's the approach that I take. Obviously everyone does it differently, but yeah.
Is this a sales call? How do you respond?
Another good one. I think like for me, I don't get that often. Maybe because it's Africa, but also like I don't like when I call it out of the blue, like saying, "Oh, can I have 30 seconds?" This type of stuff. I think like it just puts you on a lower level to the prospect and making them feel like you need them rather than they need you straight off the bat. And I think that gives them, let's say, the feeling that they know you know them and they know you. So as in like you're not a step behind, you're ahead. You control the conversation. Whereas if you ask for 30 seconds, then they can already say yes or no. It's a yes or no question. It's not like an open-ended question. So I think like this is a sales call. Sometimes I've joked around if it's let's say someone lower down. I say, what if it was a sales call? Would that be like a terrible thing, or would you drop the phone? And if they say yes, then I'm like, listen, it's not a cold call, I promise. I'm just trying to catch up, or I'm trying to like have a little quick conversation. So it's just like you need to basically like judge the situation or the scenario based on the prospect and based on their tone, and then like decide what the best answer is.
If a prospect saying we are already working with a competitor, what's your move?
First of all, I'd like to understand when the renewal is happening. I'd ask them, is your renewal up for discussion or evaluation again sometime soon? Or I would ask them, how would you rate that tool out of 10, as I would say? If it's 11 out of 10, if they say that, then there's probably not much room for adding to that. If it's not, I would usually say you can't say 7 because 7 is the most common answer. So I'd say you can't say 7. What would you rate it? If they rate it lower than 7, then I would say what would make it an 11? What would make it a 10? If you had a magic wand, what would like you change to make it perfect? And then they tell me. But I think like a competitor is not always a bad thing. It just shows that they know what you're talking about and they understand what the conversation is about. And I think it's very important. A lot of people, when you hop on calls, let's say in Africa, even they think it's a recruitment call. They think it's like, I don't know, like they think it's different things. So it's good that they understand that, and then you just go from there. And I think like as I said, like just asking them how it is at the moment and how is your team finding it, and then going from there.
We're done with the segment of the role play.
Thank God, thank God.
You have your own experience in sales, and you know how to talk. You know how to convince a prospect. You know how to move him up the ladder and take him to the next step. But still, when you're moving to another company, even though they know that you had your own fair share of experience in sales, they still give you a churn lead to call them. What's your take on that?
I think churn lead is not a bad thing. Like we're fully outbound, but sometimes I have a report for churned opportunities, or churned like customers. I think that's probably one of the biggest sources of like opportunities for me. Going back to an old lead that's probably bought Datadog or like let's say a product back in 2022, and maybe at the time they were spending on Datadog, but because it's expensive or it's known to be expensive, they struggled as a startup. Let's say I work with commercial companies, so companies between 0 and 1,000 employees, and it wasn't good timing. Or let's say it was price. Let's say it was they were going through economic instability within the company. Then you call them back and you're like, listen, I know you were using Datadog at the time. You obviously know the value. And obviously this was a circumstance at the time. It's a better time to reevaluate that and take it on again, since you've grown and since you've developed as a company. And I think it's a great way to prospect. And I think a lot of people forget about that. It's also part of following up. Like following up is very major. Someone that tells you in 2023 that they're going to evaluate the tools in 2024, early 2024, Q1, Q2, you need to jot that down on your calendar. You need to make sure that you follow up with them. It's a good opportunity rather than a bad opportunity. So I would definitely take it on and be like, yes, sir, thank you.
What's a red flag in a sales manager?
Ooh.
Playing with fire now. So
I know I'm on the spot here. Honestly, I'm a great manager. I've only had one manager, obviously being in sales 9 months as an SDR. I love like let's say hands-off manager that hands you that autonomy, that like he shows you that he trusts you and knows that you're good at your job. Whereas a manager that is a micromanager, I would say in a sense that like literally follows your every footsteps, what are you doing, this and that. I think I probably wouldn't. He probably wouldn't get the best out of me just because I like to have my own. Because it's like a business, your own business. Your accounts are like your own business. You run them the way you want, the way you think is appropriate, and then they look at the results. So that's how I see it. Whereas if I'm not performing, then fair enough. Then you look at activities, you look at metrics, you look at what am I doing wrong because I'm not performing. But let's say I am performing, and you know that, and you know I'm a good salesperson. Then I think like being a micromanager is not the best, and it's probably gonna rather bring me left and bring me down than open right. So yeah, I think I work best with, let's say, like hands-off managers that can give you that trust, and that's just my perspective. Obviously, everyone works differently. A lot of people, they need to be micromanaged because they like to ask a million questions. They want to know every detail, and they need like let's say to baby them on the journey, which is different. Everyone has their own perspective, but that's just my perspective. Just to reiterate, my manager is great.
you
He's probably the
mentioned that
best manager I've ever
you
had.
mentioned that.
Yeah.
What would you do differently if you restarted in sales tomorrow?
Ooh, this is a hard question. What would I do differently? I think coming into sales, thinking it's like once you get the job, that's it over, or once you sign your contract, that's your hard work done, and is a bad mindset to go into the job. I think if you take that into the job thinking you know it all and you've already done a lot of the hard work and you've been mentored to get the role, obviously that's a big part of it. But once you get into it, like the journey starts from zero, and you have to basically put yourself to a lower pedestal than your peers, and you need to basically make them feel that they are better than you, they're more knowledgeable than you in the field. So you need to go to them and approach them, ask them a million questions, try get to know things that you didn't think about previously, or like shadow top performers, shadow your AEs. Bro, like they love when you ask questions. They love when they can see that you take initiative. Whereas if you're like acting like you know it all and you've got the job and you're chilling, like that's the really bad mindset to have, and you're probably not going to succeed, and you're probably not going to pass probation. So I'd say doing something differently. I'd say trying to ramp up and figuring out, let's say, the product market fit, how that works. Try to be more knowledgeable on the product, because once you have the knowledge, going into calls, you're more confident. And I would say another thing is dialing in straight away. Once you start in the job, try get on the phone straight away, because if you delay it, it's gonna only cause you to slow your progress and basically like long the process. So if you're ramping up in 3 months, it's gonna take 4 months, 5, 6 months, and then your peers are going for account executive roles because they're promoting, like because they progress quickly and you haven't, and you're stagnant. So I'd say like put yourself out of your comfort zone in a nutshell, and ask the right questions, and you're more than likely to succeed. And smash the phones, because they're your main source of success.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It was quite an episode.
The pleasure is mine, to be honest, Majid. I really appreciate you reaching out and setting this up. My first podcast. So I hope I didn't do too bad. And I hope everyone can benefit. Obviously, I'm no sales king. I'm no sales expert, but I try to give from my experience what I feel I could add into the conversation. And I hope, as I said, it benefits people, and we can go from there and keep up the good work. I hope to see your podcast on the top very soon, and we'll stay in contact.